Advances in detecting cancer recurrence earlier and more accurately are transforming how the disease is treated and monitored. One of the companies on the leading edge is Natera. Joining us now, Natera CEO Steve Chapman. The company is celebrating 10 years since going public on the NASDAQ, and you got a real market cap at this point, and some really good, not only peer-reviewed research. You've got a product. I think you were did you have a profit or at least cash flow positive at this point?
Yeah, cash flow positive.
Yeah.
Yep.
But a market cap, what's your market cap right now?
Yeah, we're about $22 billion market cap.
$22 billion.
Yep.
Mostly on this one compound, this one technique that you do. Can you explain it and what it's called?
Yeah, so Natera is a market-leading genetic testing company. We specialize in looking at extremely tiny quantities of DNA. We deployed that across 3 areas of healthcare. The first is in cancer, where we can detect cancer recurrence up to 2 years in advance of imaging. The second is in organ health, where we can detect organ rejection ahead of biopsy. And then the third is in prenatal care, reproductive health care, where we can detect abnormalities in pregnancy as early as 9 weeks.
So someone gets colon cancer. So then
Yep.
they detect it, they go through whatever intervention their doctors think is appropriate. They try to remove it. They use chemo. They might even use some new therapy. So you don't know whether it's gone. So you're waiting around, and if you have that horrible news a year later that it's recurring usually from imaging. So you've got something that's called Signatera, and it's specialized for each patient. So how does that work? You look at what their normal cells would do and what the genetic imprint of that normal cell is, and then you compare it to, you take a piece of their tumor and sequence it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the biggest problems with cancer care is disease recurrence. So about 20 to 50% of patients will have disease recurrence in their lifetime. So what we do is we look for tiny fragments of tumor DNA that are circulating around in the patient's blood. And to do that, we make a unique test for each patient. So we do an entire sequence of the genetic tumor, either the whole exome or the whole genome. We find a signature that's unique just for that patient. And then we make an assay that can be used in the blood that looks for that unique signature. So from a simple blood draw, we can detect cancer recurrence up to 2 years in advance of imaging, or after the doctor's done everything they can possibly do to get rid of the cancer from the body. We can do a blood draw, and we can tell whether there's still tiny fragments of DNA there.
Do you compare the mutations that this person's tumor has to a norm? Is there a standard of what it's supposed to look like, or
Yep.
is it? There is.
Yep.
So you use a standard of what a normal, healthy person has, and then you take the tumor of a person who has colon cancer, and you find these little, it could be a single point mutation.
Yeah, exactly. So what we do is we sequence the entire tumor, and then we also sequence the patient's germline DNA, and then we look for
Somatic
differences
cells, yeah.
between the somatic and the germline DNA. So the DNA from your blood, from your body, compared against the DNA from the tumor, and then we also have historical data on what genetic information should look like, and we can see what variants are driving the cancer.
How much do these tests cost, and are they covered by insurance?
Yeah, so we follow standard billing and reimbursement guidelines. We're in network with the vast majority of the insurance plans. So in the vast majority of the cases, the patients don't owe anything out of pocket, but they may owe a copay or deductible, which is usually a few $100s. Sometimes if they haven't met their deductible, they could owe more. But we have patient assistance programs and financial hardship programs.
So 12 million tests processed so far. What's your total addressable market at this point?
Yeah, so we think overall, when you look at the broad portfolio of tests that we're doing, it's around $50 billion. So if you look just at the MRD segment, which is Signatera, and the oncology section, it's around $20 billion. These are very large, unpenetrated markets that we're operating in with very significant unmet clinical needs.